start out by introducing yourself.
So I am Police Constable Peter De Quintal. I've been with the Toronto Police Service for over 16 years. I am currently a member of the Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights section of the Toronto Police Service.
Okay, so Peter, let's talk about your last name for a second. Because when I saw your last name, my husband's Brazilian, as some people know. And when I saw your last name, I'm like, oh, husband. Like I think I might be interviewing like a Portuguese or a Brazilian police officer. His last name is De Quintal, which Quintal in Portuguese means backyard. So of the backyard. But then you sent me a story that a reporter, one of my former colleagues, in fact, had done about you. And I heard De Quintal. I'm like, De Quintal, isn't it De Quintal? So what's going on there, Peter? Are you mispronouncing your name or am I? I mean, obviously I'm mispronouncing your name, but have you anglicized your name?
You are actually saying it absolutely right. So typically I would just, I'm Constable Peter De Quintal. It's easier for people to pronounce and stuff. But yes, the Portuguese way and the proper way, I guess, of saying my last name, the proper way. My parents would be super proud to be De Quintal, right? That like you have it. I'm very impressed. Like I'll tell you, my wedding was really hard to get the DJ to say it properly. I was like Keen, so like K-E-E-N to get him to say it properly. Quintal. Yes. Oh, very impressed. Thank you.
I get you there because, okay, so my husband, I never say the names of my family members on air or anything, but I think you're the same. So my husband, he's got like a million names. And so when he was becoming like a permanent resident and then a Canadian citizen and going through all of the different paperwork, and he was having to like spell out each of his names and every single name, it's like he pronounces it in Portuguese, obviously, because that's how you pronounce it, but he would have to like anglicize it. And I wish I could just say it so you understood. But when we started naming our kids, I wanted to give them like Portuguese names. And there was one name in particular that had significance to us because we would have been naming our son after my late father-in-law. But it was one of those names that in English, people wouldn't be able to pronounce it. And we didn't want them to be pronouncing it wrong. So yeah, okay, De Quintal. I'm going to call you that so that if your parents are watching, they'll be like, yeah, this woman has
it. My parents will watch this afterwards. After they're gonna be like, you have to watch this.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we got to talk about your background first before we get into anything. What are we looking at? Anybody that knows you wouldn't be surprised, I understand, but just explain.
No, so on social media, I am the Star Wars cop or Star Wars cop, depending to where on social media you find me. But yeah, so this is me. This is actually my garage, and that's my X-Wing. From time to time, I like, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little lapsed on my pilot license, so it's been sitting back there for a little bit, but yeah, no, it's the rebellion. I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Right, of course.
So.
Of course. Okay, so you got some other backgrounds. When we logged on, this isn't the one that I was looking at. I want you to show me, because when you do your virtual meetings, you've always got something Star Wars, right? Hello.
Yeah, depends on the meeting we're coming into. I have different ones where it's like we're in the hub of like the rebellion because I'm like, okay, this is a team meeting, we got to get together and stuff. And then, there's just me traveling down the hallway and stuff, or, reaching out to Anakin as a young man back on Tatooine.
Yes.
The Cloud City. And then, there's the Emperor and stuff. So yeah,
when you're feeling kind of dark.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I find this background's actually really good with not making me look too weird, like blending into the background.
Okay.
Whereas, yeah, you got to choose it for the mood of the day.
Yes. That's hilarious. Okay, so we're just gonna stay in your garage. That's good. That's good.
That's it.
Okay, so Peter, Star Wars cop. Let's start on that. Star Wars. Why Star Wars? I mean, every Star Wars fans right now is saying, why Star Wars? What do you mean? Break it down for me, Peter. I love Star Wars too, but I'm not going to lie. Up until about a year ago, I had only watched the original trilogy, and then I got caught up on everything, and I'm like, amazing. So just tell me where your passion comes from.
So I have two older brothers who are big in Star Wars. So as kids, I was exposed to Star Wars. I can remember, I actually have this tie to this day. My middle brother got a tie from Eaton's. That is a Star Wars tie. That is the original trilogy with like Leia, Han Solo's on it, Obi-Wan, amazing tie. I still have that tie today. And so my brothers had the toys and stuff. So I grew up with it. I wasn't always the biggest Star Wars fan. It was always there. And then, I don't know, just as the time went by, I really started getting into Star Wars. And I'm a huge toy collector, so I have way too many lightsabers, way too many helmets. I have joined meetings at different times when we're in breakout rooms where I'm wearing like a different helmet, just to break up some of the topic and stuff. I'm like, okay. And so, yeah, some of our team meetings, like, we were like, how many helmets do you have? I'm like, honestly, I got to count them out because I don't know.
We're talking like stormtrooper helmets.
I have 2 different kinds of stormtrooper helmets. I have like, Luke Skywalker's helmet, Wedge Antilles' helmet. I have like Bo-Katan's from the new. I have Mandalorian. I have Boba Fett. I have an Imperial Guard. I have Darth Vader. Ooh, you're making me think here. I have the Death Watch, which is like a similar kind of like a Boba Fett style helmet. I have First Order helmets. I have a white and a red.
Oh
Yeah, oh my God, if my wife is
do you store them all behind you there in your garage, or do you have a room in your house?
Do I have a room in my house? So it started off as a single room, so we have an extra bedroom that was like a toy place. It is what my nieces and nephews would refer to as the museum. Has expanded. We finished the basement. We finished our basement years ago, and I bought the shelving unit. And I promised that I was gonna it was just gonna be a few lightsabers, just a few. Yeah, it's like overfull. My wife's like, honestly, when I go down there, it gives me anxiety, but I'm like, it's beautiful, isn't it? I said, it's a talking point when people come by, like, it's amazing. I've done videos and stuff with it in the background, some of the stuff, but it's always changing. Unfortunately, I'm like one of those guys that if you have something Star Wars, I have to have like one of everything. So like, a particular clothing company just came out with a new line of Star Wars. I'm like, okay, I've always wanted a Tilly hat. I'm gonna buy that Tilly hat. Yeah, like I have like, oh, there's a Star Wars watch kind of thing and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's got to be something Star Wars. And
I feel like you've got like, you must have like a Star Wars like savings plan. Like if you log into your online banking, you've got like checking, savings, Star Wars.
That would be actually fantastic if I actually budgeted properly. But yeah, I would love that. Like, my Star Wars like legacy fund for myself. And this is only where I can pull money out of and stuff. But unfortunately, yeah, no.
I love it. You know what? And I feel for your wife. I mean, my husband, I don't remember if I mentioned this to you in our last conversation, but my husband is a big toy collector. I call them his dolls, and his stuff is like mostly music stuff. It's music and comic book stuff. And we've got like a whole like showcase full of all these dolls, and he likes to collect like vinyls and art books. And he's like a big pop culture guy, but in addition to like everything we have on display, there's the stuff that people never see that are in the boxes and cannot be touched. And they're so precious that they just sit in cardboard boxes underneath our stairs.
So I used to be like that where I always wanted my toys out so that I could appreciate the full articulation of them, the detail. And then, yeah, in the last few years, I've become more of a putting certain things in boxes, but other things I have to have displayed. Like I will never leave a lightsaber in the box because like you can't appreciate how beautiful it is. And I will tell you, I have dolls. I have 5 or 6 Barbie dolls that were Star Wars. They're stunning.
Really? Barbie did Star Wars?
Barbie did Star Wars. Beautiful. Some of them, like there's one I don't have, which is Chewbacca, because people were asking like $600 for it. I'm like, yeah. And I remember a guy being like, I can get you one for like 400. I'm like, at the end of the day, it's a Barbie.
Okay, wait. A Barbie, like legit, like Mattel Barbie Chewbacca?
Yep, she's beautiful.
Covered in hair?
Oh, she's stunning. No, not on hair. So they're all very fashionable. I will tell you, Princess Leia is beautiful. The doll itself is beautiful. They come in these beautiful cardboard things that open up, and it's like a plastic display so you can see through. The artwork to it, they're limited to like 20,000 a piece. So there's R2D2, like I have R2D2, C3PO, Darth Vader, a stormtrooper. I can't even remember. Ray's one of them. So there was a series of them. The only one I don't have is Chewbacca, because people were like, I could tell you a whole story about trying to get Chewbacca from a certain retailer where they kept sending me a baby seat, and they did it like 5 times. They even talked about it on Twitter at one point. I'm like, you guys are gonna get this right at some point, right?
What? Yeah, they sent you a baby seat instead of Barbie Chewbacca? How does that happen? And they kept doing it, not just once?
No, they did like 5 times. I'd be like, okay, and they're like, no, we fixed it. Order it again. And then I'll be honest, my wife tried it like 2 times on her own. She's like, no, I called them. I sat on the phone with them for an hour. They got their barcoding correct. I'm like, okay. And it comes, and I would get like, I don't know what kind of cards. Like it was like was like a seat that goes on the side of the table, like you can feed a small infant. One of
Right.
those kind of high chair, like a high
Like a
chair kind of
lobster
thing.
chair. We used to have like this lobster chair that you clip on, one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I'm like, and I'll be honest, the first time it came in, I ripped open the box thinking this is just a box that like ship it in. It was a box they had. I'm like, nope.
They're sending you a seat to put little Barbie Chewy into when he/she, I think you referred to it as she, is it because it's a Barbie,
Yes,
finally arrives? Okay.
Yeah. But the Barbie dolls are beautiful, and you can Google them. They were
You got to
There was a
send me,
whole-
you got to send me some pictures of them if you're willing to share. I would love to be able to put those in.
Absolutely. I have like Lego. I have so yeah. And so out of Star Wars, yeah, I created a whole bunch of programs around Star Wars. Like everything has a
Okay.
Star Wars theme. So
Okay. We got to get into that. So first, tell me about, you told me a little bit about your childhood. Is there anything else you want to share? Like, did you grow up in Toronto or Ontario? Where did you grow up? And just tell me about your journey through childhood, teenager, and onto policing.
so I grew up Bloor and Dufferin, just south of Bloor and Dufferin, so very close to Dufferin Mall. I went to an elementary
Little
school.
Portugal, basically.
Yeah. My parents were like, my parents came here very young. They got married here. They had, I have two older brothers, and then they thought they'd give it a third try for the perfect child. I came into the world. I am actually born on my parents' wedding anniversary, so I am the greatest gift they could ask for. That's what I'm sticking to. I don't know if they.
I'm sure your brothers are just nodding along. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I went to an elementary school just quite a bit north, St. Anthony's Elementary School, which is still around. And then my high school was St. Mary's, which was like predominantly Portuguese. Like we would have like 900 students. I would say like 700 plus of them were Portuguese and stuff.
Really?
So yeah, and so I very convenient. I really enjoyed St. Mary's, and I fully support St. Mary's. It wasn't my school of choice, but my parents were like, it's 5 minutes away. So, and it literally went, I would hear the first bell and I could like walk over kind of thing.
Nice.
Like, I'd still be late, but I was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I grew up there. So that's where I spent the vast majority of my life. I used to go to a Portuguese club, Canadian Madeira Club, which was just on College Street. I grew up there. I did Portuguese folklore dancing for like 10 years, which if you really look hard on Google, you might be able to find a picture of me, but good luck trying to recognize me as a young child there.
Okay, you need to find that picture and send it on over, because I think you know exactly where to find it.
I've seen it on Google.
Okay.
It's probably because more recently some people have decided to put it on Instagram and to share that memory with me. I'm like,
Okay, you've given me some clues. Okay.
there you go. So yeah, and then like, my dad was the president of that club for like 4 years when I was growing up and stuff. Lots of long nights. I loved it. I used to go, like I was telling a colleague, I used to go to Montreal every summer to dance. And I was like, I don't think I best described it when I first opened up. Like, I'm like, yeah, we used to get paid to go dancing. Like, I was a kid, different thing, folklore dancing. It sounded weird when you say, well, I got paid to dance. I'm like, no. So yeah. I was born and raised there. And so I always knew since the age of 5 that I want to be a police officer. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to just be any police officer. Like I didn't want nothing against the other police services. I always want to be a Toronto police officer. This is the city where I was born and raised. This is the city I want to put back into, like invest back into and stuff. And in general, I always had a relatively good impression of police. I had a couple of tickets that I would say were questionable earlier on.
Okay. Speeding, no seatbelt. What was it? Public intoxication?
Yeah, public intoxication. So I don't drink. I drank since I was very young. But no, I got a stop sign. I won't get too much into details, but it was questionable.
Okay.
I don't know if I want this to be part of this thing.
It's okay. We're good. Okay. I want to touch that. You said since you were 5 years old, you wanted to be a police officer. Do you remember like what did you think a police officer did like when you were 5 years old? What was your impression of the job that you were chasing?
So my exact impression was I was in kindergarten. I got to see Blinky. Now, telling people Blinky now doesn't have the same concept when I was children. If you don't know what Blinky is a very old police car that has literally giant eyes that blink.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and Blinky used to come out to schools with a police officer and do like a bit of a presentation. And I was a kid and I was like, I want to work with Blinky because I thought Blinky was the coolest thing. It was like a life size, it was a real car that was animated, that could talk. And the thing I have come to realize as an adult, Blinky is still literally the same car. Blinky, I also believe, was the first Toronto police car to go from yellow to white.
Forward-thinking Blinky.
It's Blinky was the change that was coming. And Blinky still looks pretty much the same. I've had Blinky come out to community events, and it's funny, they once brought Blinky on, they're like, Blinky's not blinking. I'm like, then Blinky's not blinking. Like, Blinky is not Blinky. I don't like, that doesn't work.
Blinky's got dry eyes.
Oh yeah, so he was like, and he's got, I don't know what gender he would go by, he or she, but he has
he, she, they, whatever.
Yeah, big eyelashes, and we just like. And then I'm like, the Blinky's having staring competitions with the kids. I'm like, yeah, that's not my Blinky. And Blinky also
that's creepy, Blinky.
Yes, Blinky also got carted around. So Blinky is in a trailer and stuff. So, but I've had Blinky come back out, and honestly, seeing Blinky still comes out at the Santa Claus parade. So when the Santa Claus parade was in person, Blinky's literally still one of the front things. Comes out with the Toronto Police. Blinky is always there.
Wow. So that's really interesting because like so many police officers that I've interviewed as part of this campaign, first of all, many of them never thought in a million years they'd become police officers. And then when they finally did, they didn't really realize like what the job would be. There was so much stuff that they learned. But for you, the vision you had of policing when you were 5 years old, that is in large part like what you ended up doing. Like that's actually pretty amazing. So bring me back to the beginning of your career. When did you start policing? Where did you start? Like what sorts of things were you doing? Let's just walk through the beginning years.
So it took me about 2.5 years to get on. It took me about 2.5 years on. I got hired back in 2006. So my class is 0602, which means I was the second class of 2006. So I went to OPC during the summer. I will tell you my time at OPC, so the Ontario Police College, was incredible. I've made friends out of my pod for life. I still talk to the same group of people for the most part. And yeah, I loved my time there. I was really excited. I'll be honest, it was my first time away from home.
For anybody that isn't aware, the Ontario Police College is out in Aylmer, Ontario. It's like in the middle of nowhere. I've gone there a few times. You're driving through these rural roads, and then until suddenly you come upon this big training compound. And that's where you spend, you have to go there for, what is it, 6 months? What is it?
It's like 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. So you're away from your family and you're just like nose in the books and everything.
So Monday to Friday, that's what you do. And then there's the Elmer 500, because that's what happens on Friday when we all try to escape to get back to outside back. And Elmer, if there's any residents of Elmer who are watching this, it's a fantastic, very, very small place. Mm-hmm. We can remember calling for pizza. I think it was like around 9-10 o'clock, and we woke the guy up. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm sleeping. I'm like, but isn't this such and such pizza? He's like, yeah. And look at the time. I'm like, oh God, where am I?
You're not in Kansas anymore.
No, it was the last time I actually got to see Grimace and Hamburglar was at a McDonald's there, and I was amazed. Wow. I had not seen Grimace. And for people who don't know,
there's a McDonald's in Aylmer?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
How have I never seen that before?
Not a big town.
I guess I've never really explored Aylmer itself. I've just sort of gone straight to the police college. The things you learn.
Yeah. So there is that one McDonald's, and yeah, we got to see, and I can't remember what her name, McBirdie or something, the bird one. I
remember Hamburglar. I remember what the other ones look like, but I don't remember what the other ones are named.
Oscar Big Mac. I have Oscar Big Mac as like a toy because he's just the coolest thing.
Of course you do.
But yeah, so I went there, I had a great time. I ended up assigned to 12 Division, which is Black Creek and Chathewey, which I spent basically the first 15 years of my career. And through there, I was like primary response. So I did 911. I was part of the mobile crisis intervention team. I did a whole bunch of things within the community response unit. So I was like traffic complaints. I was a school resource officer. I was community school liaison officer. Just worked in general in the crew. I was part of the Tavis neighborhood Tavis initiative. So not like what Tavis was overall, just their
not the rapid response, but yeah, I remember doing stories when I was at CTV years ago. Neighborhood Tavis program was just excellent. It's all about going out and creating relationships with the community, much like the neighborhood officer program now, right?
Correct. So yeah, and then so I did all that kind of stuff, and then I had the opportunity.
Let's just talk about that 12 Division, because 12 Division, where you were stationed, that's not too far from where you grew up, really. It's sort of just
the neighborhood division.
little, right?
Northwest. Yeah.
So, but were you familiar with that area growing up? Like you spent your life in Toronto. Was there anything that surprised you? Like I spent a lot of time in 12 Division as a reporter. I always enjoyed my time there, but was there anything you had to adjust to? Anything that surprised you about the city you had spent your life in?
So I was always a downtown kid. I didn't go too far north. Like
Mhm.
I would always tell you I'm from Toronto, but I'm Toronto proper. Like I am old Toronto. I'm not North York. I'm not, I grew up, I'm Toronto.
Yep.
Like I would tell you, I would walk to the Eaton Center as a kid and that kind of stuff, right? Like,
You are
but yeah,
metropolitan Toronto. You are pre-amalgamation Toronto.
correct. I was Toronto. Like I can remember having a library card, and this is really dating me, but you had to have a different library card if you went up North York. Like if you went north of Eglinton, your old little library card didn't work. It was a different thing and stuff, right? So yeah, like I was like, yeah.
That's how they keep you in Toronto.
Those little library cards, and then it would go through that machine that would spin and kick it back out. I have no idea how anything was tracked. That technology was incredible. But then, you're talking microfiche when you used to search things up and stuff. So I'm totally dating myself. I'm really not that old.
I love microfiche. I could talk microfiche all day. I miss the microfiche machines.
So yeah, I grew up there. So I will say, going to 12 Division, I really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of the area. I definitely did not realize how many Portuguese were in the community. Like Rogers Road, I would tell you is where most Portuguese are now, most definitely.
Yeah. That's a great point. I know some Brazilians that live on Rogers Road. I don't know if they're still there, but the Brazilians tend to find their way to the Portuguese neighborhood, even though Brazilians are always like, Brazil is better. And Portuguese are always like, Portuguese is better. They still like to hang out. So.
Yes. So yeah, I had no idea the amount of Portuguese that were in the community and stuff. And so I was put there, I guess, most likely because I was Portuguese, and typically you don't police in your own backyard. So having come from what was 14 Division to 12. So yeah, I will tell you my Portuguese is like non-existent for the most part.
Yeah.
In our pre-conversation, I will tell you, Tamara, you probably spoke better Portuguese than me. I had to tell my parents about it. I'm like, I'm pretty embarrassed by this. However, I can understand most things. And I can read, if you give me a Portuguese newspaper, I can actually read to get the gist of it. Because I do quite a bit with Portuguese media. So I will, in general, like they used to just put it out in English, and the last few times it's been translated to Portuguese. So I got to go through and like, yeah, that's what I said. And then I'll get my parents to like verify. They're like, no, it sounds good. I'm like, okay.
Peter, you can just take your phone now and you can put the Google Translate app on your phone, and you can actually just hover it over a picture and it will literally just translate it. Like if you, it's amazing. I just learned this because our mother-in-law was traveling here from Brazil, and we were trying to tell her, tips for going through the airports and everything. You can literally just take your phone and go boop, and on your phone, it will show up. Like, seriously, I'm going to send you a screen recording after we get off this call. You don't even need to know Portuguese anymore. Don't tell your parents I said that. Desculpa, parents, desculpa. But anyway, okay. So 12 Division, you did so much stuff. Like it really sounds like when you talk about your dad being you said he was the president of that Portuguese, what was it called? The Portuguese Club?
Canadian Madeira Club. Canadian
right.
Madeira Club.
Like it sounds like you were very like community minded growing up. And then did you tell the police service, this is what I want to do? Or did they just see that you're this really personable guy that loves the community? How did you end up like school resource officer, neighborhood Tavis?
So
tell me about that.
My original idea was like, I was going to become an incredible investigator, and I was going to be like in a unit doing criminal investigations and this and that. And then something happened during my career where I had applied for a couple of different spots, and I got the spot I didn't anticipate getting, and I was like, okay, and it just kind of geared me into this. So when I started in like traffic complaints, I was like, okay, during the winter there's not a ton going on. There's not a lot of as many speeders and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I decided, like, I went to a boss who was really open to ideas and stuff, and I said, look, I want to do bike rodeo program. Is this something we got away from? Is this like
bike rodeo program?
Bike rodeo program, because I remember as a kid, police used to come to my school and do a bike rodeo program. Like, that's the coolest thing. And so my whole thing started, my mentality was, well, I really need to engage kids. Like, we do a whole thing, like, kids are like, police are community helpers. And I've always wanted people to have a good impression of the uniform and stuff. And I think, cycling is a huge topic. It's a huge topic right now in the city of Toronto. And what are we doing to, train kids, get them educated, helmet use and stuff. So I created a bike rodeo program, and off we went.
So
And
tell us,
I ran that
whoever's
bike.
not familiar with bike rodeo program, what is it? What do you do with these kids?
So we run them through stages. So ideally, I'm not teaching you basics of cycling. I'm not trying to teach you, like, I'm not getting you off your training wheels. However, I've had kids participate in the training wheels. So it's typically like grade 4s and 5s, depending to your school. If you're a smaller school, then kind of everybody gets engaged in it. As long as you have a bicycle and you can wear a helmet, we bring you out, we run you through different stages. So in those different stages, you learn different things. We're focusing on maybe shoulder checks, learning your brakes. A stop sign is never stoptional, right? You come to a full
Stoptional. Do you say stoptional?
Yeah, that's my thing.
I like it. Stoptional.
Stop signs were never meant to be optional. It's stop. It doesn't matter if no one's around, they're not optional. Like, oh, look, there's nobody here, I'm just going to go through. Yep. I see it all the time. So teaching them things like that. And as time has evolved, I don't ever want them to feel like they're coming back to the same program. So we've introduced things. And then part of that bike rodeo program is, so yeah, they're learning cycling, they're doing different things. They're going through pylons, and the pylons narrow and stuff. So to build up the confidence that they can get through tighter spots, and always thinking like, I have to be on these bigger things. We focus in on, like, each kid would be issued bells and lights. Why? Because, well, you need to have that bell because you need to attract attention, because you're always on the sidewalk and you're sharing the sidewalk with, runners and strollers and dog walkers. So we encourage that. The lights, in case you're after dusk or you're pre-dawn, that you're somehow cycling, we want you to have lights. And then I would go out and get like a corporate sponsorship for these things, because we do different things. So that bike rodeo program pre-COVID ran 7 years straight. We had over 2,000 participants in it. I'm in the process. So officially, unofficially, it'll be back in the fall. I'm so excited. Amazing. I've already reached out to some schools and they're like, yeah, sign us up. Let's do this. And I'm so excited to be going back. And it'll be back into 12th division, because that's where I started it. That's where, honestly, all my stuff is housed. And then we see where we go from there. But like, out of that bike rodeo program came so many other things. I ended up, getting with the Ontario Trial Lawyers Association in a particular law firm that were awesome. And so this law firm found me through the Portuguese community. One of the partners is Portuguese. So they're a personal injury law firm who just really wanted to help out. And so with them, we did, in 5 years, we've donated 3,000 helmets into the community, free of charge to kids.
That's amazing, because for anybody that doesn't have kids and hasn't gone shopping for helmets, those things are expensive.
Yeah.
And I imagine some families have, not 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. I was talking to, in another episode of TPS Trust, an officer who was helping a family who had 7 kids get backpacks. If you don't have a lot of money, helmets, like, those things save lives, but they cost a lot of money. So I love that program.
Absolutely. And technically, so the law is anyone under the age of 18 must wear a helmet when they're out cycling. And nothing bothers me more than seeing a kid without a helmet or not wearing a helmet properly. Like, I just sent my kids to bike camp, and I will tell you, my kids wore their helmet properly the whole time. I can't speak for all the kids there, because I was like twitching a couple times. I'm like, they're not wearing their helmet properly, or they're kicking their helmet across the floor. I'm like, oh my God, we don't do that. That's not how it works. Because out of that came, I found out what's called the Toronto Helmet Initiative. So you can go onto the City of Toronto's website. So www.toronto.ca/helmets. You will see a couple of fantastic videos of myself going through the helmet thing. I only say fantastic because I'm like trying to, feel good about myself.
It was fantastic, Peter. I saw the videos.
Oh,
it was fantastic.
Thank you. And so, yeah, I partnered with Toronto Public Health, Sick Kids, and both school boards. So the public and Catholic school board were part of it. One of the videos has a doctor and a nurse from Sick Kids, who are fantastic people. We had Rory McGuckin, who's the director of education for the Catholic board, participating in it. And that was to encourage parents to get out, because I think sometimes, the cost of a bike is it's a set cost. It's not the cheapest thing. And then sometimes you don't realize, like, well, no, I need to get a helmet, or you don't have the means of getting a helmet. So out of that was, okay, let's get the education portion. And then, yeah, how do we get helmets into the community and stuff? And how do we help make this all happen and stuff? And so, yeah, having partnerships like that are incredible. And I can't thank people enough for being willing to do it. So yeah, bike rodeo became helmet giveaway, became Toronto Helmet Initiative, all out of that. I really like the cycling. It's just awesome seeing kids and stuff, and they get out there and they have so much fun. My one mistake, but I'll continue that mistake because it's just too much fun, is putting the bells on at the beginning of the program. So we put the bells on, and oh my God, the kids are just so excited. It's like, okay, guys, okay.
Ding,
we're not going to
ding.
ring them the whole time. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Like, no, we're not going to ring them the whole time.
Peter, you're reminding me. So earlier this summer, we drove out to Canmore. my mother-in-law was visiting. We wanted to show her the mountains for the first time. We went to this gift shop at Moraine Lake, which is just outside of, like, next to Lake Louise, basically. And we said, okay, kids, like, this is a special trip. You can each pick out one gift to remember our trip. And we have two boys and a girl. And the two boys went to there were these little replica RCMP vehicles. And you open the doors and it goes, like, can we get this? And I'm like, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. Okay, we can get them. The entire drive back to Canmore and then all the way back to Saskatchewan, like through the prairies. So I'm picturing you with these bike bells. You're like, okay, but helmets. You're like, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and part of the bike ride, like, so depending on what was going on, we'd have, like, I would do, like, so if you could imagine musical chairs, I would do musical chairs with the kids. So they would cycle around. I'd have a megaphone and we'd play music, and then blast when the stop is out, and that's how we continue it and stuff.
Okay.
And then like there was so much that went on with that. Like I had I had so many pictures and stuff. They would donate T-shirts for the newest movie and stuff to give out, like, swag for the kids, little things that have an impact into the community and stuff. And the kids would love it. Like I remember taking a picture, and I even had, like, one of the senior officers, so my unit commander, we had these Angry Bird glasses, and so it had the eyebrows and stuff. It was awesome, and it was just so much fun to take care of the kids, because seeing things like that, I think, for the kids helps really bridge a gap, right? Like, and so it makes them, like, I've gone in, and so I'd have auxiliary officers, so they're volunteer police officers who come out who are just trying to do the great things by the community and stuff, and they would come out and they would love it because they would see the kids' reaction to us and stuff. And we've come into schools where, like, we're swarmed, and the kids like, oh yeah, it's bike radio time. I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy, and just things like that. Like, and out of that program became different things. Like, so it's always about how do we engage and empower our youth and stuff. So then I would get high schools to volunteer their students. I'm like, look, you need hours to graduate. Why don't you come out to a bike radio and participate? It's not going to be anything too difficult. Your basic role is to encourage the kids and make sure they're, like, you know, their brakes are working, like we're moving through the things. And it was awesome. And so much came out of that. I have a really, like, the fact that I ran for 7 years, like, I have a love for that program, and I'm so excited. Like, I went to ask my current boss the other day, I'm like, out of curiosity, you know, with things going back to the way it was, what do you think of bike rides? Like, I'm totally on board. I'm like, yes.
Awesome.
And so I wrote my grant to Pro Action Cops and Kids. If you don't know what Pro Action Cops and Kids is, it's a charity that helps fund police engagement into the community and stuff, and they are awesome. And I am a 2-time Jack Sinclair winner, which is the most innovative program. My bike radio program has never won. However, I created other Star Wars programs. So with those, I had at one point what was called Coding with Star Wars, which was, we had these little R2-D2 robots, and it was a company that the CEO was a Canadian female CEO out of the US. And so that's why I like the attachment of the idea of a female who's a CEO, just empowering young girls into coding and stuff. And so let's do that. It was a Canadian, like, you know, it was a Canadian. I will tell you, they were an incredible company. They wrote their first case study because they were like, police officers, like, doing stuff like this with kids we've never heard of. And so they created this case study of the US on us, and it was awesome. And they built these R2-D2s, and it was so cool.
What's the company? Can you say what the company is?
Little Bits. So
okay.
Little Bits. Yeah. So Little Bits they joined with another company called Sphero. Sphero used to make amazing little Star Wars robots. So I have, like, this little, like, BB-8 that rolls by and stuff. Really cool. And their robot car is what I envision Blinky being one day. It was like seeing the animation come to life. His mouth moves. It is ridiculously cool.
Wow.
So yes, there's a very large child inside me.
Okay, I want to ask you about something. You mentioned, like, a few moments ago, bridging a gap, like how you feel like these programs really bridge a gap in the community. Are you referring to, like, kids who might not be trustworthy of police and bridging the gap that way? Or are you referring to bridging a gap that will be there in the future so that, you know, that structure is in place moving forward should they need police? Like, tell me more about that important part.
I think it's all of that. So, you know, working in 12th Division, there's some socioeconomic issues and stuff in play and stuff. So it's an opportunity for the show that, like, look, beyond this uniform, I am a human being. I am no, like, honestly, at the end of the day, I have kids. I am part of the community. I grew up nearby and stuff. I came from an immigrant, like, I'm a first generation Canadian. I came from an immigrant family. My parents came here with little to nothing and stuff, and their lives were lived to give me the opportunity to thrive. And same with my brothers. And so how do we, just as a police officer and as a human being, how do I give you the opportunity maybe I didn't have? And how do I push those things through? And like, how can I encourage them? And so, look, there are a lot of great organizations out there. There are a lot of people who want to help. And sometimes they just don't know how. So you give them that opportunity and stuff. And so part of it is, it's the bridging. I want you to realize, because I'll tell you, a pet peeve of mine is every time a parent says, and I've heard it before, well, if you're bad, they're going to come get you. I'm like, no. That's not quite how it works. And so I want you to realize that if you ever did need help, that we're here to help you. And so it's an opportunity to engage you. It's an opportunity to see this uniform and to have that engagement. And when you see, like, look, I used to run a Star Wars breakfast program in a high school, right? And so every day you have hundreds of students coming through, and it was amazing. I will tell you, my time as a school resource officer was incredible. I was recently at a retirement of a child and youth worker who's probably one of the most incredible women I've ever met. And she is the greatest heart. And she had a whole bunch of students there. And seeing the way they referred to her as their best friend and this, man, you're talking years later. These kids, the vast majority of them had gone through my bike rodeo program as volunteers and stuff. Some of them, which was mine, like, so running it that amount of time was, you got to see kids who were bike rodeo participants go on to high school and want to volunteer back into the same program. It's powerful, right? Like, you're watching the cycle of coming, and one of those kids still had like a first aid. So the Canadian Automobile Association, CAA, gives me these little first aid kits. They pay for the lights as well, and they give me these first aid kits. That kid is a high school student, still had that first aid kit, and she like put new band-aids and stuff. So I can't verify it, but I talked to a couple of her friends at this retirement party, like, no, she plans to go to medical school and stuff. I'm like, I'm not saying the bike rodeo, but I'm not saying my bike rodeo program by any means, but it was interesting. Like, you still keep that first aid kit. You're talking 5 years, you're in high school now, and you still have that small this little backpack looking thing, and you're maintaining it and stuff. And like, it's really cool. And I will say, talking to some of those kids worked at a bike camp, which encouraged me to put my kids in bike camp, only because those kids were so awesome. It's like, your bike rodeo, I used as a reference and stuff. And yeah, I don't know.
So why should it be a police officer? Like, you mentioned that child and youth worker. I feel like people would say, yeah, child and youth workers, they mentor youth, they work with youth. Why should it be a police officer's job to be doing those programs though? Why is that important from like a public safety perspective?
It's a great question. I think we're all involved in the community. We're all members of the community. We all have a place and a role to play. And I think as a police officer, if I'm just responding to 911, you're just going to see me as the person who comes in, and ideally I'm not coming in the best situation at times, right? I will tell you. So before coming to this unit, I was in primary response, was 911. One of the hardest calls I had to go to was, I recognize these kids from my school, and now I'm not Officer Peter. I'm coming to get, I'm removing like a family member. It was tough to watch the reaction on those kids, because you see me in one light, and I don't think they weren't upset with me by any means, but it was just hard. It's different. And I will say, as becoming a parent, my perspective on things has changed. I used to be really good when I got earlier into this career about, what happens in the uniform happens in the uniform. I'd hang up my uniform in my locker and I'd go home, and I was pretty good about separating things. As time went on and becoming a parent, things with kids really hit me hard. I can remember one house where there's 2 kids, and mom was suffering from a mental crisis and clearly wasn't in the right state of mind. And you watch these 2 little kids come out and they're completely naked. They're not, for their ages, they're not where they should be on talking and this and that. And like, just the way the little girl held on to me was, I don't know. I've seen some incredible moments in humanity. I've seen some very sad moments, and it's something I talk about. So I put out a lot on social media about mental health and stuff, and it's something I think people forget when they see a police officer. Well, that's the job you signed up for. You have no idea what I see. To people on the front lines. They have no idea what people see on a regular basis, what call I've just come from, where I'm going and stuff. And like, you just expect, well, that's what you signed up for. It is. I had no idea how bad, how evil people could be to one another, and just what goes on and stuff. And you know, the going from call to call, where I could be at a medical call where, you know, maybe I see, you know, an elderly person pass away or an infant pass away, and then I have to go to the next call where it could just be a simple bike theft or, you know, this and that. And having heart and still empathy and compassion towards the community and stuff. And that's always been my big thing, because I've seen it. And my whole thing is, I don't know, like, you could be somebody's family member. Like, to me, we're all in this together, and we rise when we stick together. And I can't stand division. And so the whole thing is, how do we treat each other? And I want you, that elderly person, that young kid, I'd want them to be treated as if they were my own child and stuff, right? Like, can we treat each other with respect and stuff, and we challenge it? And it's hard. Like, this job it's not an easy job. I will tell you, I never realized coming onto this job the amount of paperwork that goes into this job. People have no idea that, you know, okay, I might spend a half hour with you, but the hour afterwards of the paperwork to make sure that I've done this, and the policies and procedures behind it are gigantic. And so there's a lot that goes on. But yeah, sorry, I think I went off a little bit.
No. I think it's all very important. How have you coped with that mental health part then? I've talked to different officers have their own coping mechanisms, or were you not coping for a period of time? Was there a point that you were like, whoa, this is not the Peter I want to be, I gotta fix things somehow? Like, how have you coped with it through the years?
So there's definitely been challenges. I've tried to talk to different people. Running became my thing. So I've used running as I use the hashtag running as my therapy at times, because that I'm unfortunately my running's gone lax in the last little while. I've put on some weight, but that's a diet issues more than running. But it's my moment to be by myself. To be honest with you, I would run the times like a year and a half. I would have done like 15, 17 kilometers and not even thought, because I'm just trying to file my day away, right? Like, that was my moment to clear things up and file things away, because it's challenges, right? Like, I face challenges at work. So I have my own things going on at work. And then, you know, after that shift, I got to go home. My kids don't care that, you know, daddy's tired or, but like, they were the worst on night shift. I'm like, oh, good Lord, sleep,
Yes.
please. Like, you know,
Let daddy sleep.
Yeah, I'd be wearing the earplugs. I'd have like my eye thing. Like, I'm like,
I got the earplugs and the eye mask too, and I don't even work night shifts. Okay.
So I was just like, this is, you know, it's hard, but they don't have a concept. They just want, you know, daddy to come home and play and stuff. And so there's a lot of challenges around that. And so yeah, I have thought therapy, and I've spoken to a therapist in the past and stuff. I see nothing wrong with that. And I think it's something that we need to encourage more, is the ability to talk to one another, because sometimes talking to one another as police officers is great. I swore that I would never marry another police officer. When I got on, I had zero interest in it. The reason being is, honestly, I want to go home and hear a different story.
Yeah.
I don't want to be comparing things. I don't want shop talk at home.
Yeah.
My wife is in a very different industry than I am. And so having different conversations and stuff. And so getting yourself pulled away from this is my way of coping with it and stuff. Like, you know, I coach baseball on the side and stuff. Like one of my son's baseball. I'm like, honestly, it's really nice to get pulled away and stuff, and just, you know, concentrate on something else that's not policing and stuff. So yeah.
I can tell, Peter, that like the way that you've talked about things like bike rodeo and, you know, the Star Wars breakfast and stuff like that with the kids, that energizes you. Your passion just like it seeps through your pores when you're talking about that. What was it like for you then when the pandemic hit and then suddenly it was like crickets? I guess you're in the office, you're working from home, whatever you were doing. Like, that must have been hard.
I don't know if I want to talk about this. No.
You don't need to if you're not comfortable.
So, okay. So yeah, a lot changed with COVID. So originally, so I had a partner who worked in high schools and I worked at elementary school level. We were doing, I guess we were going from park to park, checking out pharmacies, all that kind of stuff that was around the pandemic and stuff. And then eventually we got absorbed for a short time into the community response unit, and then we went back to the road. But at that time, the community school liaison officer program was canceled. And with that came a lot of different changes. Like, I was really involved in comm kids which used to be Kids Cops Computers, where they give out free computers to kids in need. And so in my division, we were running it like 5 different schools. You might have 20 kids who are getting free Chromebooks. And it was awesome. It was a great program. They had to do 5 sessions with me, which were always fun and entertaining. I always like, you had to engage. You just had to. It was great. And ComKids as an organization are fantastic people. And so I loved it. I'm still defending Officer of the Year, if anyone's wondering on that.
Love it.
It may have helped that, but I'm still defending Officer of the Year. And I love that program. Like I spoke to our YIPPY, so our Youth and Policing Initiative kids the other day, and one of those kids was a ComKids kid, and I was like, "That's amazing!" That's amazing.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, the YIPPY program is, it's students that come and they basically kind of act as like interns, like working with police. They get paid for the summer, right?
Correct. So
they
we
got little like uniform, like little, not uniforms, little shirts, not little shirts, they're not little, but appropriately sized shirts. Start talking, Peter. Stop.
So they wear a golf shirt. They wear a golf shirt that has the YIPPY Pro.
It's
YIPPY
blue.
logo.
It's like navy or something. Yeah.
So yeah, they run spring, fall, and summer. That program clearly was put on pause for a while, but it's coming back. We have 2 kids in our office on this floor now, and it's awesome. Awesome. I'm this coming Sunday, I'm actually taking a group of kids out. So past YIPPYs out to breakfast, and I've been doing it for years because there are some key YIPPYs who just had an incredible impact. We're amazing kids, and I also I pay for breakfast. I can't afford to have them all there. So I invite like the kids who really stood out, who've actually also kept lines of communication up with me. Like the other day, I got one of the kids. I got an email from a manager at a Shoppers that they wanted to get a job at. I could not speak more highly of this kid. And they're like, "Would you work with the child again?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I'm like, on their review, which they don't see, I check mark that they should be rehired. If they ever chose to come back in whatever capacity, absolutely. And it's things like that. Like, so it's that opportunity. But yeah, COVID killed a lot of programs. Like I used to do the SSP program, which is the School Safety Patroller program, which CA used to run across the province, like, I don't know, 20,000 or 8, ridiculous amount of number of kids across the province. And we had about 1,500 of them in the city of Toronto. And that was a program when I first inherited, we had 1 school in my division. By the time 3 years later, I had 12 schools.
Wow.
And it was awesome because you're empowering these kids, and it's just awesome. They go out with their little vests and they're basically like crossing guards, but they never interfere with traffic. They're making it safe for everybody else. So they open and close their gates. It's incredible program. I can't speak more highly of it. Then we'd have a big movie day and all this stuff, and all that got taken away because of COVID. And those little things have hit home hard, like losing the bike rodeo program to, we didn't do the helmets because you can't engage the kids. And then, I was being welcomed back into a certain amount of my schools, but the program overall was considered at this time of COVID, we're going to cancel it. And so that hit. And so then, eventually I ended up on the road. Going back to the road, I hadn't been on the road for a couple of years, was good. It was nice to get back there. It was hard to see the connections with some the kids and stuff and re-engage them in a different manner. And stuff. And then,
you mean some of the kids that you're working with in schools again, then you were engaging with them as a frontline officer?
Correct. So, nothing with the kids themselves, but maybe I'm coming into your house because, mom maybe is having an issue or dad's having an issue. And then you're coming in there and it's a different perspective now because now you're seeing me as, I'm the police officer and, but
do you think that helps though? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Having a previous relationship, not necessarily with you, but with police, so that when you are there for those hard interactions, it's like you're somebody that can be trusted. So do you feel those benefits, going back to community response?
I do, because I think it also helped that particular time with the kids, knowing who I was and stuff and having that conversation. It's still not a great, it's a bad moment in your life and stuff, but at least you know who I am. And I'll be honest with you, it's something that I always liked hearing was from other officers would say, they talked about Officer Peter today when we went to do so and so. I'm like, awesome. Because what I'm doing is I'm not only building, this isn't about me, this is about us, right? The idea of what I do makes us all look good. Right. As much as we will hear somebody go offside as an officer on media and stuff, and that makes us all look bad, also favor the people who are going out there and are making those contacts on the front lines, who are building those bridges so that when you come, they're more friendly to you. They might you're trying to get access to that apartment building. They're going to open that door for you because they have that connection that hey, Officer Peter is a good guy, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna assume you guys are all good, right? And that's the goal and stuff. And so seeing that, so yeah, COVID threw that all for a thing. Yeah, threw definitely threw a wrench into the works. So yeah, so I had an opportunity to come downtown because I thought, okay, it's time for career, like a kind of change and thing. And part of my role here was to be part of the community engagement stuff. I'm like, I love that stuff. And I'll be honest with you, it's really missing things. So that's how I was like, okay, I'm going to coach baseball. I sit as a director on a Portuguese Federation of Canadian Business Professionals. I sit, like, I am part of the Yorkville Run Committee. Like, it was all these things. I'm like, okay, how do I get back into the community? How do I keep doing these things? And then when my boss gave me the thumbs up to do the bike ride, I'm like, okay, what you just gave me was a thumbs up for the bike ride. But realize the Toronto, like the helmets are going to come back, like everything that kind of, and he's been nothing but supportive of it and stuff. And he'd also like some more of our, some people within our unit to see what it's like to be out there. Because I work in a very, it's a civilian unit for the most part.
Yeah. Tell us about the unit that you work in, because it's one that isn't really talked about a lot on the public stage.
So we are the Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. So predominantly it is a civilian unit. I am a uniform liaison. So I am to give you the frontline perspective and stuff, and how police officers think, the reality of the situation, what the training we go through, because most of them come from outside of the police service itself. Fantastic individuals and stuff, but they come with very different perspectives. And they haven't necessarily, because of COVID, had the exposure to see, like, go for a ride along or see kind of what police do and stuff. And so that's where I come in. And so it's an excellent opportunity. So I was assigned to the race-based data collection team, which was a big, our big release came out in June about that stuff, and it'll be the continual thing. But there's so many other things going on about making our service better, improving upon what we've done in the past, realizing where we've gone wrong, and let's work towards better things. And so that was always my thing. Because I remember someone telling me, like, you, Peter, as an individual, never changes the Toronto Police, but I can be part of a section that is bringing about change. Right. And I'm not saying that, we're doing things wrong, but could we, like, could we be doing things better in certain things, in certain situations? Absolutely. And so there's room to improve. And I love the idea of being part of that. I love the group of people I get the opportunity to work with and show them what policing is like and stuff, right? They come from different sectors and stuff. And so this is like, this is what I would see as a front line. This is how I would act. Like, some of the things might be as simple as they're writing a script, and how would a police officer talk to them and stuff. And I'm like, this is how we would talk and stuff. And I've always been someone, I will kill you with kindness. Like, you can talk to me all day. I'm like, that's fine. I will kill you with kindness. Right. Like, and so it is what
even if somebody's coming up to you, Peter, and saying, like, you're a pig, you're wearing the uniform, I don't like the cops, are you still killing that person with kindness?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember being at a protest where I was called a predator. I'm like, whoa, predator.
A predator?
Yeah. And I was like, a predator. And I'm like, do you even know what I'm about or anything? I've had people say the absolutely worst things to me. I'm like, you clearly have no idea. And usually I'll be like, you know what, do yourself a favor. After we've had this conversation, whatever goes on in your life, do yourself a favor, maybe Google me for a minute and see some of the things I've done. Because all my programs, I have been on different media, I've been in different newspapers. Find out, because what you're focusing in on is you have no idea who I am as an individual. And I get it. You look at this uniform. I have a very tough time separating me from the uniform, though. This is the career choice I've done. Have we had bad eggs? Yes. Will we have bad eggs? That's a given. We're a very large organization. I used to talk in high schools, and I've done, like, conferences for entire board and stuff. I'm like, look, you guys all go to different high schools. How many of you have a teacher you don't like? And a whole bunch of the kids will always raise your hand. I'm like, yeah. And there's only like 60 staff members. And I'm not trying to speak poorly of teachers. My brothers, like, I've come from a family. I'm just saying, as a particular thing, there's always going to be maybe one or two you're not going to get along. It's unfortunate that you've had that engagement, but realize the vast majority of us are trying to do the right thing day in and day out. We have hundreds of thousands of interactions throughout the year, and most of them, the vast majority, are successful. Like, it goes well without incident. What you're hearing is the ones that go outside, but you don't realize how much work is going into it, right? Like, being part of the mobile crisis intervention team and stuff, dealing with mental crisis and stuff. I agree, there should be other resources out there just beyond police officer, but at times it's unsafe to send someone else there. So I come there. But I will tell you, I would have apprehended, I don't know, a couple hundred people probably in my time there. The vast majority of people, I didn't put handcuffs on. My perspective, my thing, because some people, I get it. Like, unless I thought you were a threat to me or the nurse, okay, well, then I'm going to have to put handcuffs on. Were there situations there? Oh, absolutely. Right. There was absolutely times where I'm like, okay, I got to get the handcuffs on you, because especially working with a nurse, I'm like, I had what was I called my favorite nurse was Nana. She was my Nana. She was like a 65-year-old nurse kind of thing. She was amazing. And, like, nursing for like 30 plus years, is an incredible person. But I'm like, you can't hurt her. Like, I need to protect my Nana. Nothing happens to Nana. And so she knows I call her that. So that's not a thing.
Love it.
Adele was an amazing person. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still friends with some of those nurses. Like, one of the nurses, Suzanne, had gone, so she was part of the program. She had gone down to the US for years. We went out for a run the other day and stuff. So the years later, and I haven't been part of the MCIT team for 11 years. And I'm still friends with the nurses I work with, because you truly build a bond with some of these people that is everlasting, because we see people sometimes at their worst. And sometimes people just need help. It's just, they don't know where to reach out to, and they need help. So they need someone who's going to come in and care. And, the goal was always, and I would say we were doing a really good job at probably taking ourselves almost out of a job, was referring you to other agencies and stuff. My goal was never to be like the hard hand where I'm going to, take you into the hospital and apprehend you. I have the authority to, but let's see how we can get you help. Maybe you need to be put back with your worker and stuff, and you just lost pace, or, you need, like, your medication, something's gone wrong and stuff. And so how do we help with that? So yeah, the vast majority of times I would have said I wouldn't have handcuffed people. And I would have transported you and said, okay, let's go, let's figure this out. We're going to get you to the hospital and stuff, and thing. But also seeing people in crisis, I'll tell you, seeing a child in crisis was very hard times, because you get to walk on their wards. And so being there, watching kids who I almost felt like, because they're on meds, and just the way you see people change. Because I've had friends, like, part of my reason for going mobile crisis was a close friend of mine was struggling with a lot of things. And so I thought this was my means of trying to figure things out. And having a conversation with her at times when she was on medication, because it wasn't, whatever, the proper one, it was very different. And I'm like, you're not you. No, I'm me. And just, so you face these challenges, but you need to appreciate it. And I don't understand these things. So how do I get to understand? Well, into the fire I go, and let me try to understand these things, right? Like, I have faced it within my own family and stuff, challenges of mental health and stuff. And so how do we work together and stuff? And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
What did you learn? What did you learn in the MCIT that you didn't know before?
It's an imperfect system. There's no one fix for everything. There's a lot of work. I think there's a lot that needs to be done with supports and stuff, and how do we continue that support? It's difficult. I never came in with the idea of being the heavy-handed thing. I almost looked at sometimes it was like, I'm here to protect the nurse, just don't hurt the nurse. Because honestly, I don't have any training. Like, it's not like I had a training at that time. I was prior to the training that's come in and stuff.
Like, what year are we talking? When were you MCIT?
Ooh, that's a really good question. 2008, 2009, maybe.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't even know if it wasn't really even part of the public conversation. It's such a part of the conversation now, but that is very early days.
So the MCIT program in 12 division at that time had probably only existed for maybe a year and a half tops. So we were new. We were 12. We covered 12 and 31 division.
Okay. Yep.
We responded to. I had a car that was 1209. It was one of the old Crown Vics, and that was the car we went around in. And I had been covering it until I came here. I was still covering it from time to time during the summer, and they drive like much nicer caravans now that have like a radio that I can actually listen to music when we're not like on a call and stuff, or hear what's going on in the news. So it was very different. Like, you look at the nurses, they would have not like a tablet, whereas before, like, everything was paper and stuff when we were going through. So it was very, very different. And they also cover like the 12 division one, which is CIT 03, covers off 12, 31, 23, and 13 at times.
Oh my gosh.
They're
That's a lot.
Yeah. 23 has its own team. So there's coverage, like, it's not just us, but there's another team all the way out and stuff. But back then, we were 12 and 31. I would have told you when we first got in, we were really busy. And then as time went by, you really get to help people, guide them into like other options outside of, like, you don't always want to call 911, call your worker. This is like, well, and get them the help and get their worker on side, right? Because a worker themselves maybe have a ton of files and things and this and that. And so maybe something, just you thought this one was like, that file was going okay, but here we are. And I'm like, you know, I don't know, last thing I want to see is someone like hospitalized if we can get them the help and not have them sit in the hospital, because there's also limited beds at a hospital and stuff. And then you may be putting them into an environment where maybe somebody else is hostile, right? Because I've seen people who are mental health, like in crises, do very, very bad things to somebody else. But then an hour later, they're like, you know, they appear absolutely fine to you. And they're like, oh, can I go home? Not realizing anything they had done and stuff. And you're like, it's a different conversation and stuff. And so, yeah, yeah, it was interesting. It was very interesting to learn a lot from the perspective of a police officer to the way the hospital works and this and that. So yeah, different.
What an interesting career you've had. I know you said you went into policing thinking, I mean, you first went into policing thinking, I want to work with Blinky, but then you wanted to, you know, be an investigator and all this stuff. But man, you've had so many interesting roles that have given you different exposures to the community and how the community works and how police works with the community. I think you've had an absolutely fascinating career, and it's been, oh my gosh, I'm going to try to do some math right now. What, 16 years you've been with police then? You started in 2006, you said? Yeah. And what do you see? I mean, you still have a lot of time left, I guess, I assume. What do you see for the rest of your career? What do you want to do? Bike rodeo till the end, or what?
Bike rodeos till the end. No, I don't know. I love community engagement. I love the idea of working. Like, if I could just work on building bridges all day, every day, that would probably be amazing. Because I love the idea. I love working in school. I love the idea of us being there. I love the idea of the community helper thing. I love engaging kids. Like, I love doing presentations. Even though at times, I'll be honest with you, doing the same presentation over and over again would get kind of like, okay, here we go again, let's do this. Kids react differently, and then you have different conversations sometimes with kids. And then it's the opportunity, it's what comes out of it. Like, I love programs like Calm Kids and stuff, things where it's more of an intimate thing. It's me and the same dozen kids or 20 kids week by week going through the program. That's why I was like the coding and stuff, because you watch kids develop. You get to see where, you know, that neither of us had any idea of how to do coding, but as time went by, you see them. And I can remember some parents like telling me like how their kids were looking so forward to that day, especially when competition came and stuff, because we did like, there was a whole end finale thing. It was a big deal and stuff. And you watch them and you just watch them progress. And the interest, it's no different than like, you know, coaching baseball, where you watch some kids who were like amazingly progressing, and then other kids who were just having a real tough time, like grasping certain things. So it's awesome. And doing it in the uniform is the idea, like, look, I'm here, right? Like, because it also bridges that gap with families and stuff, right? Like, you know, when you go home and stuff, I don't know what challenges you face at home, but if I can give you a safer opportunity at school or where we're doing a program together, where you feel like you can maybe be yourself. And that, like, I used to do a Lego thing because I didn't want everything to, like, you know, there's lots of athletic things for you to do at school, but there's not always like, you know, more niche things where you give a kid an opportunity to get engaged in something. Like, you know, I still play with Lego, and there's kids in high school who play with Lego. And so, you know, we do Star Wars Lego. It was amazing.
And there's some cool Star Wars Lego now.
Star Wars Lego. I might have a few.
Yeah, I think you probably do.
I love
more than a few. I hope you have a Costco membership, because they're way cheaper there.
So much better.
Yeah.
I do. So yeah, it's the opportunities and stuff. I really love community engagement. If I could do it for the rest of my career, where I'm out in the community and doing things and stuff and having that opportunity to engage. So, because like I talk a lot, I can ramble, but I'm passionate about community, the idea of us getting out there and stuff, right? And the idea of, you know, you know, other than outside of this uniform, I'm still a human being. I have found my kids go to schools, the same schools like your kids might go to, and this and that and blah, blah, right? And it's an excellent opportunity. And have I worked with people who then realize afterwards, maybe after some time, we've been doing something in the community, and you realize I'm a police officer, and like, perspective changes. Because you might have seen the uniform first and automatically had this, you know, you build up your defense against it, like, oh, you know, those guys or whatever. But hold on, if you realize after it sometimes, like, hold on, you're a police officer? Yep, I've been for quite some time. And so it's the conversation and stuff. And so it's a way, because I think sometimes, you know, and, you know, different things, different culture and this and that. Like, I can say one of the most powerful things told to me was by a principal who was Black, who told me growing up, he was told, you don't talk to police. Police aren't here to help you. and he was a much more mature man. And he's telling me that the CSLO program, when I was there, changed perspectives. And he's like, if I had a police officer like you in my school when I was a kid, perspective would have been very different. And the impact you have. And yeah, he had me like, I'm like, we got to end this conversation, because I'm like, you're gonna get me in tears here. And I don't want the kids to see me cry. And it was just, it was a conversation we had, and I'll never forget it. Never forget it. And that was when the CSO program was coming to an end. And he said that to me, and that, like, if I could have that like engraved on my tombstone, like the way he said it and the words he put to it and stuff, and coming from somebody who's, you know, a racialized community, who doesn't, you know, was brought up in this way of saying, you know, police don't, like, we don't talk to police, we don't do this and that stuff, and saying, like, you know, we had some like you in our community, perspectives change, right? Like, and that's what it's the goal, right? Like I used to do random things. Like I can tell you one particular school, they were on the media at one point. This is like an elementary school that only goes to grade 5. And they were in the media because, you know, some of the staff had said like it was like a war zone kind of thing. Different principal comes in, perspectives change. I went out there and spray painted in the snowbanks inspiring words. Be awesome, be you, be kind. You're beautiful. You are like, never let go of your dreams, kind of like. And so you can buy it. It was essentially spray chalk, but it was made for snow. And I just went out there, and I was knee deep in snow. It was awesome. And I just ran out there. I was like, and I'm spraying, and teachers were coming out. And they're like, what you're doing is incredible. And it was just something like, I want kids to feel good about themselves, because too often we get challenged by social media, and right, and we compare ourselves to what is a highlight reel. Like I will tell you, yeah, I have a background up, but I don't have. There's no filter. This is the face that you get when you meet in person. It's not going to be someone different. So yeah, it just, and so it's the opportunity. Like I want, like I see it all the time. The challenges kids face, and the competitiveness, because you're chasing a dream that is on social media. And like, oh, I'm gonna be a, you know, I'm gonna live off of my social media. I remember meeting a guy who actually works for the Toronto Police Service, who will tell you he had like 70,000 subscribers on YouTube. He was huge into gaming. And he's like, look, my best month was $3,000.
Wow.
$3,000. I'm like, okay, so he goes, you make about 36,000. He goes, 3,000 was my best month. But you have 70,000 subscribers. You tell kids that 70,000 subscribers, they think it's a huge thing. Yeah. And, you, no, and he was young himself. Yeah. So he become part of the Toronto Police. He's like, I don't get benefits or this and that. When people sell you on this thing, like, this is the lifestyle, and you're going to be everything off of this, and blah blah. And so it's an opportunity and stuff. And so any way to empower youth, and that's why a lot of my programs have been about, you know, like the SSP program, School Safety Patrol. You're making these little kids into leaders, right? We're creating little leaders in the community. We're empowering them to help guide other kids across the street, like keep them safe. It was such a great program. Things like that, like you're giving them the opportunities, having kids, high school kid, come on and volunteer, and it works. It's an easy sell to everybody. You're creating leaders. It's an opportunity for your high school to showcase your students, right? Like, bring them out. You know what? Why are community kids? Why is my kid here going to a high school far away? Because, you know, maybe this high school has some sort of stigma that it's not a great school or this or that. But then you get to meet the kids who are there, and you realize what they're doing, and the possibilities become endless. And how do we like foster that in the community? We need to build each other up. Like, you know, something we had in our pre-conversation was the crabs in the bucket.
Right.
It was something I mentioned to you. And I learned the crabs in the bucket. I volunteered 20 plus years ago now in Tijuana, helping to build like an orphanage and stuff. And something I learned from one of the gentlemen, I stayed at Casa del Migrante, which is like it's an overnight place. Men stay there, kind of, you can stay there, but you can only be there for a limited amount of time and stuff. And it was all men, and some of them would make a move for the border overnight and stuff.
Like it's a shelter? It's a shelter?
Yes, it's a shelter. And very kind of rough area. Being in Tijuana was incredible to see the absolute polar opposites of one another. We're walking through what is housing at one point that was corrugated aluminum. So you're on the dirt floor and stuff, and they're stealing electricity. So you can see an eyesight, a beautiful mall outside, stunning mall that we later went to. But like the fact that you can see this from, like, how is this possible? That's the different things, right? Like, you know, I used to make jokes because when we were building this one part of this orphanage, I was like, I've seen WSID videos that have gone like this. I'm like, we're gonna, because we're on like the side of this like cliff kind of thing. We're like digging, and I'm like, I don't know about this, but it was honestly an opportunity. It was run with like students and stuff. But you see these things, and so the crab in the buckets mentality is what something I learned from them, and was, you know, our issue here is we never truly succeed at times because one crab will escape the bucket, but when you put several crabs, if you try to escape that bucket, the other ones will pull you back, because why do you get to succeed? And that is always stuck in my head because I see it in my own community and stuff. Whereas, well, why do you get to be better than I am, or blah, blah, or why do you think you're better? And the goal is never to think you're better. The goal is to raise each other up, right? If I look good, you look good, we all look good. And so I think that's a big part of community engagement with policing and stuff is, if one of us is making us look good, support that person, go for it. But we all have different roles within this organization, and support it and stuff, right? Like, so that's always something that is always stuck in my head. And I'll be honest with you, I have no intention of ever going there. My brother really pushed me to go. My middle brother is really big into community. He's been to Haiti a whole bunch of times, Tijuana a whole bunch of times, and that was never my thing. But going there was, it was incredibly eye-opening. And we literally went with like suitcases full of donations and stuff. Coming across, we went from San Diego across into Tijuana. It was an incredible experience. It was very different. It was very humbling to see the things that you take so for granted and stuff. Like simple things, like, I'll be honest with you, it was the weirdest thing, but flushing toilet paper down the toilet isn't necessarily a thing everywhere, right? And so things like that and stuff. And the people were so genuine. Like, you think of all these, like, there's 150 random men in there, right? And just like the fact that someone cared for them and how much they appreciated that and stuff, and the investment into them, even just spending a few minutes with them, like listening to them play like an instrument and stuff. It was incredible. And then just seeing our kids' mentalities change. And I will tell you, to this day, I had my best pizza at an orphanage in Tijuana. It was incredible. But the kids were you watch kids come by. I will tell you, there was probably maybe 5 to 10 feet away from us a dead dog, which is throwing us all off. All these kids want to do is play patty cake with you. They just want simple things to escape. And just the love that someone came enough and was spending time with them and was giving them time was, it's things like that. And so from that, here I am, like, the idea of how do we give back and appreciating what we have and stuff. You know, like, I don't know, like I'm always like, like, maybe you have, like, I grew up in a semi-detached house where we could always hear the neighbor, right? And it wasn't a very big house at all. But my parents had us there with 3 boys, right? Like, my parents originally came with my grandparents, and everybody stayed in that house. And so when my parents bought their own house, my parents, until I was 10 years old, I didn't have my own bedroom. We had a renter, Lola, who was on the 2nd floor, an amazing woman, who's really sweet. Lola was just a heart. I would sometimes just sit on her kitchen floor. I'm not one of your kids, right? And so, I would just sit on her floor and stuff and watch her cook and stuff and this and that. And Lola was an incredible woman, but around the age of 10, my parents said, okay, you need to move out because, Peter needs to get his own room and stuff. And we want to move upstairs. And she was fantastic. She bought her own place and stuff. But that was the reality of it and stuff. And so, it was just the way it was, like, to survive, this is what my parents needed to do and stuff. And, it was very much like, so, coming here as Portuguese, a whole bunch of my cousins would have lived in my grandparents' house. Then my parents buy their own house. Then they moved in there. And then you go and buy your own thing. And then for the longest time, we rented the 2nd floor because that was a means of making my parents getting by and stuff. So I think I have a very good appreciation for, look, you don't have everything in the world and stuff. Like, I'm thankful for everything my parents have done to get us to this point because it's the opportunities and stuff, right? And my parents are amazing grandparents. Like, I kid them all the time, like, the things my kids get away with, I would have never got away with. Like, even the slightest thing, like eating cereal in the living room would have been like, oh my God. I love my parents, so I won't get into the details, but I'm an old school Europeans.
We still don't let our kids eat in the living room. No way. But my husband too, though, he's constantly saying, and he grew up in Brazil. And his grandmother lived with him. He actually shared a bed with his grandmother. So he never had his own bedroom either. And he like some of the stuff now, and I'm a pretty hard ass parent, but my husband's like, I would never get away with this. I would never know they need to do this. They need to clean up this. No, okay.
All the
I'm
time.
good
Like
with
I
it.
will say, yeah, my son like now makes his own bed. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yes.
Because they don't have a like, I'm like, look, until the age of 10, I basically slept on grandma and grandpa's floor beside their bed.
Yeah.
Daddy didn't have a bed. Like daddy got a bed when he was old enough and they asked Lola to move. Daddy got his own bedroom. And then at that point, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't the easiest transition because it's like, hold on, I'm so used to sleeping on your floor. I get a bed. And then I remember like, I don't know, like it was just different. Like now I'm gonna sleep by myself and stuff. Like,
And your own room. Weird. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have my own room. It was weird. I'm like a bed. I'm like, I used to sleep like on a blanket, and my parents would have like a little like what they would have called a carpet beside the bed, and that was my bed. That was just kind of the way it was, right, for a very long time and stuff. And it was just, you know, different things and stuff, and right. And so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a lot of deep conversation we had there,
I want to ask you one more question, Peter, because the role that you're in right now, you were talking earlier about, you know, you can't be the one officer to like change the police service, but you can be part of the change. I wonder, 16 years into policing, how different is the police service now, or what changes do you see now versus when you started back in 2006?
There's been a lot of changes. There's been fundamental change on some of the things I saw when I first got on. I'll be honest with you, were quite shocking. I came in with a different mentality. I thought policemen were like policemen, policewomen, and a blue family. We were like knights in shining armor. And then I came in, I saw some things like, whoa, okay, not quite what I saw, but most of those people have come and gone. Some of the things that would have been said, I'm like, wow. But we're definitely very different than what we came. God, look, there were simple things like I remember I couldn't even search on Google. Like I couldn't do a web search.
Wow.
Didn't have internet access. I didn't have an email. You couldn't email me from outside the organization. No, we had like internal, like I think we were using like Lotus Notes or whatever, and that was how we think. Like so much has changed. We've changed the design of the car, like the look of it a couple times. We changed the car. We went from Crown Vics, which were amazing boats on wheels, terrible in the winter, to Ford Tauruses, which were just terrible to fit into. You went from a giant trunk to like this tiny little trunk, because what people don't realize is there's a lot of technology in that trunk to make all the computers and everything else work.
Interesting.
We went to the tiny trunk. To then we went to these beautiful SUVs. I'm like, oh. And thankfully I was like the senior guy when I went back to the road. I'm like, that's mine. I'm like, I was tough for me to fit in a Ford Taurus. But yeah, so there's been change to logos, to the way we do things, to the business. You know, I think some things are changing at a much slower pace than maybe we could. But I definitely think we're on the right road. You got to realize we're a very big organization with a lot of history to it, and so glacial pace kind of thing at times, but other times we're moving along and stuff. And I think a lot of the newer officers and the newer generation coming in, the mentality is changing and stuff. And I think certain people won't accept the way it was always done and stuff and blah, blah. And I think, you know, with time, we continue to evolve. And I do think, like, as a Toronto police, I think we are leaders in many things we do. I think, and that's why I always wanted to be here. Like, you know, we're the largest police service, municipal police service in the country, and that's a pretty awesome thing to say. Yeah, there's those horse guys, the RCMP, which I'll be honest with you, I envy that uniform when they're in their dress uniform.
Is it the boots?
Oh,
what is
the
it? The boots,
boots,
the
and
hat?
the red. Oh no, the red shirt. It's amazing.
It is beautiful.
Like, that is.
But you guys have horses too, okay? Mounted unit.
We do have a mounted unit. But theirs and their stats, like the hats, like come on. There's a prestige to that thing. Not that I want to be RCMP. I don't want the chief to watch this and be like, okay, so
I was getting kind of worried. They're going to be poaching you.
No, I'm definitely not going to the RCMP. I have no interest in that, but it's a really great uniform and stuff. And I'll be honest, even seeing them at funerals, it's very impressive to watch them come by and stuff. And see, it's so different than everybody else. We're all kind of wearing a standard like dark blue navy and stuff, and then here they come and they stand out.
You guys look very sharp in your dress uniforms too, though.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I think I love the look of the dress uniform. Unfortunately, it's sometimes only pulled out for the worst occasions.
Absolutely.
Tough times, but yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I went on a tangent here. Where am I going with this?
It's fine. You do you, Peter. Is there anything else that you like, you want the public to know about you or police officers or policing in general? We've touched on a lot, but is there anything else that, any other message you wanted to get across? Whoa, hello.
I just feel like that background was going on for too long. I'm like, you know what? I gotta get it out of the garage. I don't know. I think so my biggest thing has always been dialogue, conversation, right? If you just come and you yell at us or you berate, but you don't actually want to engage me, then how do we have this conversation? How do we evolve? Right? It would be no different than being in a relationship with, like, your spouse or friend. Do you if you just yell at them and, well, then hold on, you can have this yelling, have your moment, but come back to the table and let's talk, right? Because my biggest thing is always how do we have conversation? How do I have dialogue with you? If you can't engage with me, then how do I become what you want me to become? Like, if you think I can do improvements, yelling at me is not like, if you chastise your child all the time and say you're a terrible person, blah, blah, it's not always going to go well. No different than if you I've always been someone, I kill you with kindness. Even as a customer, if I go into your store and I am polite, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get a lot farther than you are. If you yell at somebody like, I want to speak to the manager, well, good luck to you. You know what? This person could probably do a lot more for you than, if I was a manager, I'm going to back up my employee unless they've done something obviously incredibly wrong. But I'm going to be like, no, they're doing the right thing. And so I'm always that type of person. I always ma'am, or I'm just looking for this and I saw this and can you explain to me how this works and blah, blah. Be polite, treat someone the way, the other day I was at Toys R Us and I'm returning a toy. The employee in front of me isn't quite familiar with how they do a return. So another person's helping. It's taking a bit of time. This other person decides to walk in and is waiting, given, and starts going on them. Like, I don't understand why two people have to help with that return. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, wow, I would tell you, I'd probably slow myself down now, being like, I'm going to give the customer who's not giving me a hard time more time to make sure they're satisfied than you who've already come in with this terrible attitude, right? Like, can you not see the person's training the other person? Like, part of me was going to say something, but I'm like, this isn't my place and I really don't want to get with you because chances are you're already coming from an angry place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's no different than on social media. The people who attack, this is what you come onto social media for. This is the hill you're going to die on. I'm just going to come out there and say everything negative because it's amazing to me that you set up accounts to be totally negative. I'm like, I wish you all the best in your life.
What a sad life.
I can turn it off and walk away from you and be okay. But in the back, you're probably stirring like, oh, I'm going to get him, or and I'm like, good luck to you. And it just, yeah, it's sad. What I just really wish we could have conversation. Are we doing everything right? No. Are we doing a lot of things right? Yes. And what we don't do, and just in society in general, is focusing on, it would be no different than, with our own children, our own relationships, right? Your kid can be all day, do great things, but one thing goes wrong, and what are you focusing on? That one thing. And I know I'm a parent. I've done the same thing. Like, but you forget the other 10 hours of that day where they made their bed, they ate their lunch, they cleaned up after themselves. But you focus in on like, oh, you did this. No. And we got to get away from that. And we're so, I face this challenge as well and stuff. And this is sometimes why I have a tough time watching, like, say, CP 24 times with my kids, because I can't hear 10 negative stories and then hear the one like, oh, Canada's Woodlands getting new rides today. I'm like, or this year, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. The problem is I can't watch that with my kids because I don't want my kids to think the world is negative all the time, because then it gets ingrained, right? People think like, look, if you actually look at the crime indexes for the city of Toronto, we're actually in a very safe city. But if you watch certain things that are on a 10-minute reel that keeps getting spewed to you, it gets very difficult to believe anything else. And I think that's where we get the separation and stuff. And I also think as a whole, as a society, we can do better. I think sometimes people sow the seeds of division because it helps them and what they're in their messaging. The reality is later on, when you try to come back and you try to change it, it becomes very difficult because you've sown those lines. And we can see it within our own political system and stuff. And there's a whole thing I'm going to rant about, but I just wish people would get along. Let's have conversation. the idea is we're supposed to be working for a better society, a better you and me, a better opportunity for our children and stuff, and not fighting and stuff. And it drives me nuts the way things work. Like COVID has exposed so many things that we could be doing better. Oh my God, I'm totally going on now, Tamara. I'm like, I just think we need to value people for, like, don't devalue people, value people. You know, like certain decisions are made and stuff. How do we pivot? How do we work from those things? And I don't know. Like I just think if you always complain and you always hate on whatever's in place, then you also lose the value of your messaging. You're the boy who cried wolf. And I have this conversation with my kids because they sometimes over exaggerate. And if you complain about everything, then when you legitimately have a complaint, I'm probably just going to roll my eyes and not listen to you.
Exactly.
Because everything you do is a negative thing. Like get away from that. Like think of the pot. My whole thing is don't come with me to problems, come with me to solutions. If there's a problem, address it. Hey, Peter, this is what's going on. This is how we're going to move past it and blah, blah, blah.
Are you, because I feel like you're talking in a lot of metaphors or with one degree of separation, but let's just put this out there. Are you referring to all the haters out there who are saying like, police are bad, we need to get rid of police? Are you referring to police officers who complain? Who are you referring to here? Are you referring to a life lesson in general?
A life lesson in general. However, police haters, they're going to exist no matter what.
No, but you mentioned like CP24. I know you're not referring to like media stories about when police officers do inappropriate things, but it's true that like, and I'm speaking as a member of the media, as a former member of the media, we don't report on the planes that land, you know, like this campaign is meant to show people there is more to these people behind that, like, than the uniform that you see, than the negative interactions that you see when they're responding to 911 call after 911 call. But it is like, from what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is very difficult to move forward when people cannot get past the you're the villain thing. Like, I'm just not going to get out of my head that like, you know, public and police are always going to go like this. I think that's it's a very loud minority. I really don't think that the majority of the public feels that way, but it is what I think is one of the most frustrating things for police these days, because people can give you a compliment, you know, but you carry the negative stuff. Me anyway, I carry the negative stuff a lot more than I carry the positive stuff. And I wish it was reversed. I feel like maybe you're good at carrying the positive stuff, Peter. You're good at bottling it. No,
I will tell you. So I do have an issue with the negative stuff. In general, my social media, I would say predominantly is positive because I only put out positive messaging. I'm not here to ridicule or blah, blah, blah. Can I be snarky at times, but kill you with kindness when I'm snarky?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because the reality is, you know, like you're never going to be the smartest person in the room. That goes for me, that goes for somebody else. And so just be careful of it. And it's the conversation. Like I would say, my experience being on the road, and I think officers are challenged by this, is they'll say, well, you know, people don't like us. I'm like, nah. So a guy who works in schools, works with those families, works in the community, I would say the vast majority of people are actually really supportive of us. What you get is a person who loudmouths or grandstands and says they speak for a community. No one individual speaks for any single. At best I speak for myself, maybe my family, so my wife and my kids, just because my kids are small, really. But would I tell you I speak for all of Portuguese or all of, like, you know, mankind? No.
Right? You speak for all Star Wars fans. I think that's fair.
No, there's so many of us. There's such a variety of us.
Yeah, of course.
So I think sometimes, like, you got to be careful of the noise, right? Because unfortunately, we give attention to sometimes the loudest people in the room because they demand it, and so we cater to it. And sometimes those people, like, honestly, they don't speak for anybody, maybe other than themselves, or a very special interest, and it is what it is, right? I think the vast majority of people appreciate us. I look at it every time when I'm out of the community stuff. For the vast majority of times, in general, I'm really well accepted, right? And especially when we get talking, I'm a pretty good talker. I talk a lot. So maybe you just get bored and you just kind of like start nodding at me and smiling just because you're like, when's this going to end?
No.
But it's the goal. Like, and I think conversation is such a thing. And I get it. I get what you're saying about, you know, the 1,000 planes that land. You're going to focus on that. Yeah. My thing is, we need to expand that reel of information where that isn't always coming up, because I think what people get is that one homicide becomes 20 in the same day because we see consistently. And the reality is our numbers are actually, I think this year are actually pretty good in general. And so it's how do we get you out of that mindset that you actually live in a really great city? Because if you're always looking for the negative, then things will be negative. It's the perspective you put out. Where if you go out, like I believe I live in the city of Toronto is really safe. I've never had it in general. Have I seen things go sideways where I'm just not in uniform, I'm just a regular person? Absolutely, yes. But in general, we are a population of nearing 3 million, right? Or 3 million plus, depending to what, the statistic you look at. I think we're a really good city. I think predominantly we have a really safe place. You know what? We have a great community. We have so many opportunities out there. And so I just think there's so much positive, so many great things out there that's what we should be like focusing on that. We'll fix the negative as it comes along, but we have to have a conversation. Yelling at me is not the way to start a conversation, right? And that's always been my thing is if as police officers, we're far more proactive. So we're doing those things. Because I've had these conversations with other people like, well, what is bike rodeos or coding have to do with policing? It's the opportunity to engage you. It's the opportunity to take you away from, I'm just a police officer who just, I don't know, does 911 response and nothing else. No, it's an opportunity for you to come to me and have a conversation. Tell me what's going on in your community. We're building those bridges. You have concerns. This is your opportunity. Let's talk about this on a greater scale and stuff, right? And so you go home, you tell your parents, I met a really good police officer. Well, maybe they're having an issue with somebody else or something else is going on in that community. Let's have that conversation. Now you have a way, because it's happened to me where you'll reach out to me now and say, look, Peter, I'm blah, blah. I get it quite often. I'll get a DM on my Facebook or whatever. I can't solve everyone else's issues. A lot of times I'll tell you, you need to call like your local division and stuff and blah, blah. But some of these things I can watch out for you, right? Like I can tell you, I have somebody in Utah and she's an amazing person, but some of the things that she almost gets tricked into at times, like you got to be very careful. Like, someone poses as a police officer and she's like, well, they asked me for their phone number and then they were trying to change my Facebook. I'm like, no. I went onto the account. I looked at the account. There's like 4 pictures. I'm like, that person is not a police officer. I'm telling you right now. None of those 4 pictures got posted within 2 days of each other. I'm like, that person is not a police officer. I post on a regular basis. You know what? You can call my local. You can email me. I will. And I have no problem telling you what my email is or what my local phone number is or blah blah. And you can see look at all my social media. This is who I am. Even on Twitter, I have that beautiful little check. I'm that guy. Be careful where you go and stuff. And I think sometimes nothing bothers me more than feeding off of an elderly person because this is advantageous to you and stuff. And I'm like, wow, like how sad are you? But I will tell you, when I get those calls from the CRA, I take those calls. And my wife's like, why do you even bother? I'm like, I love it because then it's taking them away from calling somebody else.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be in prison for what? Can you tell me? And I play along and I have excitement.
Where else can I send my money to? But I'm worried that I won't be enough. How much more money can I send?
Which gift cards do you want? Are they iTunes gift cards this week or is it Best Buy? I'm never quite sure which ones. And who do I send them to? Because unfortunately, it blows my mind what people get pulled into and stuff. It's unfortunate that there are other people out there who will take advantage of it. And so those are messages we need to share. But I do hold on to the negative. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely. But I think we need to focus more on the positive and be careful. Like, there are people out there who this is what their life is. They're such angry individuals that this is what's going to go on. I know, like, I won't get into certain conversations. I'm like, oh God, everyone's going to come out of like, I'm going to get the guy on Twitter who looks like, Barney the dinosaur. He's going to come out and have an argument with me. I'm like, amazing. But chances are, would you have that conversation with me in person when we're 2 human beings in the same room? Maybe not, right?
No, because you're not anonymous then. There's not that degree of separation. There's an anonymity that comes, a degree of anonymity that comes with social media where people don't see you as a person necessarily, and they think it's okay to say awful things. So on that note, Peter, don't look at social media when all this stuff is posted, because people that are happy with this stuff, they generally don't say anything. The people that actually don't watch it are the ones that are piping in with their opinions. So
I have looked at a couple of comments like, why are you wasting your time? No one's watching this, but you did. Yeah, you took the time to watch this and feel the comment, and that's what I try to like.
Or did they even watch it? Or did they even watch it though? I've seen some commentary where people are like, no, it's not good. It's like what you're zeroing in on, like a few different things that people have zeroed in on. It's so indicative that they're not actually watching the conversations. Watch these conversations. Anybody that's made it this far in this conversation, they've learned a boatload from you, Peter. And I would encourage them to go and watch the other conversations in their entirety. I think this stuff is so important because, like you said, city of Toronto, statistically speaking, when you compare it to a city of the same size, same population like Chicago, very safe city. But I always say it's not enough to be safe. People should feel safe too. And that's why I'm one reason I'm so passionate about these conversations, because hopefully somebody after watching this video, watching this conversation with you, they feel a little bit safer because they're like, okay, because maybe they're one of the people that had this picture in their mind of police because of an interaction that they had maybe when they were younger. You know, I think about that principle you were talking about, and maybe that, you know, helps them relax their shoulders a little bit next time they are pulled over by a police officer, or, you know, have a problem in their life and they need to call police and maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable calling or going to the local police station, you know? So I do think that these things can make a difference. I think that you can make a difference. I know you're not going to change all the problems of the world on your own, but I think you're doing significant work just by being you in a uniform. I think that it's fantastic. And it's also a brave thing because you know that there's people that are just going to judge you based on the uniform that you wear. And
no, and I appreciate your words so much, Tamara. Yeah, it's the reality of it. And we have let's have these conversations, like open dialogue, right? You have an issue with it. How do we sort? I will tell you, I sit on, you know, a particular board of directors. Why? Because I had particular issues with the way that organization was run. And as someone of that same background, I'm like, you know what? It's time to invest. I can't just sit in the crowd and be like, oh, you're doing this wrong. Why do we do this? No, invest. I'm part of the organization now. If there are problems, we're going to face it. We're going to figure it out. And how do we invest? Because the idea is we need to come together. If unity, bringing us, we rise when we come together. We cannot be we cannot keep clawing at each other. And what goes on now is, Tamara, on the media thing, I have overall had a very good experience in the media. So I don't ever want to think like I did. You saw the CTV stuff. I was on TVO Kids for years. I've had fantastic relationships with these people. And I'm not trying to say the negative, and I understand the way the world works and what grabs eyes and stuff. I just wish we could, you know, focus sometimes more on the positive. I can tell you, I watch certain morning television shows that are more about engagement, just talking about what's going on in the city, that are great, as opposed to ones that are too much of like the same thing, like, oh, you know, did you hear about this? I can't do that, I can't. And I think you've been wonderful on News Talk 1010.
Oh, isn't that nice?
I've heard you
My
a whole
other
bunch.
life.
Yeah.
Not always positive segments, but
no, but it's like everything else, right? We have to have, but the one thing I will say about, so an organization like, say, News Talk 1010, which I used to be on when Barbara Julia was on it, it's the conversation. How do we engage each other and stuff, right? It's conversation. Let's have this dialogue, because I think conversation can lead to so many things, right? Understand, like, you know, maybe you'll bring a different perspective where we didn't see something. Let's engage on that. How do we build towards that, right? Instead of, you know, if you're just going to yell at me at every time, well, I don't want to come into the room with you. I don't want to and stuff. But yeah,
we need to calm down first. We need to calm down. We need to turn on our Star Wars backgrounds. We need to maybe wear a helmet in meetings sometimes.
You gotta break it up. You gotta smile. You gotta, like, you know, I've been at many things where, you know, people will be like, I can't believe you, like, you know, you got them laughing out of that thing. So I'm like, you just have to have a conversation. People are fundamentally, we're human beings. Yeah. And if someone is listening to them, sometimes people just want to be heard. Yeah. You can't come into every situation thinking you're going to solve their problems. Sometimes people just want to be heard. Just like in a relationship, if you jump to try to solve everything at times, you might actually make it worse. Just be heard.
Yes. Yeah, you can ask my husband how many times I've said that to him. I'm not looking for a solution. You just need to nod your head and say, I am validated. My feelings are validated. That's it.
Absolutely. So just, totally. Yeah. This has been you're an absolute pleasure.
You are an absolute pleasure. Hey, you beat me to it, Peter. I was just going to say, you've been an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy that you reached out to me and that we got to have this conversation, that I got to meet you, because what a fantastic way to start my day. This is awesome. And it's going to be a fantastic way for other people to start their days. So thank you very much for your time, and send me some pictures of your Star Wars Barbies, of you and your helmets. I got to see that stuff. I got to throw it into the social stuff. It's awesome. And don't make me go digging for that picture of you doing Portuguese folk dance. Is that what it is?
Some things in life are truly, you appreciate more when they're earned.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Peter.
Take care. Have a great day. Thank you so much.